Hello, good evening. So today we are talking about domestic violence, but through the psychological, emotional, or verbal abuse. Yesterday we talked about domestic violence through physical abuse. Now people wonder, how can domestic violence happen through psychological or verbal abuse or even emotional abuse? It does happen. Most times, such things happen to both female or male. In other words, the statistic cannot be, might as well be 50-50 here, because either the male or the female could be a victim of psychological abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse. Let me give an example of a woman who can be a victim of psychological or verbal abuse. Let's say this woman now is not up to the standard of the man. That is the man thinking this now. He always mete out abuse to her in front of the children, household workers, outside. There's always this attitude towards the woman as if you are not good enough to be close to me. Don't stay near me. Don't sit near me when we're outside. Some of these actions begin to have a kind of psychological trauma on that woman, and eventually, follows the verbal abuse, because when the spoken words are not words of encouragement or of love or kindness, such things bring about emotional abuse. And eventually, I would like to say that when such abuse crosses the limit, the end result is what we see when we hear a lot of people just commit suicide, because a lot of times they are bottled up, they are not able to speak out. Remember, already their self-esteem is so low. This continuous psychological abuse has made that person to feel, I'm not worthy of this, I'm not worthy of this marriage, in short, I'm nothing. And eventually, anybody that begins to think like that, the next step is, what am I doing in this world? Why am I even here? My life is not useful. And another example I could give for the male counterpart is maybe in a house where a man loses his job, and eventually maybe the woman who was doing nothing, or eventually was doing something, but due to the condition now has to make more effort, and is being blessed by much wealth. Before you know it, she begins to boss the man around. I'm not saying this happens in all circumstances, please don't get me wrong. There are so many circumstances where we see things like this and there's still a happy home. But sometimes, I'm just giving an example of how it can happen. That is the verbal abuse or psychological or emotional abuse. Because by the time she begins to boss the man around, make him feel like he's the wife, and I'm the head of the family, after all, I bring the money home. Before you know it, the man begins to lose his worth. He feels hurt. His pride, his male ego is crushed. After a while, it's hard for him to go out and mix up with his mates, because it's a kind of indirect insult. He knows that people know he doesn't have a job, his wife is doing the job and bringing the money home. Then, like I say, if it's now a woman who takes pride in saying it always, even to the hearing of the children, I'm the breadwinner, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, you go and cook, go and do this, how do you expect the state of such a man to be? So it can be in any form. Another form of that can bring about psychological, emotional abuse is when there's a disadvantage, or rather, let me put it, an advantage over one spouse over the other. For instance, apart from the financial one we have discussed now, for instance, family. I've seen, as a legal practitioner, I've seen somebody who came to me for advice, and one of the reasons what she was going through is that because she's an orphan, and before her husband married her, he knew she was an orphan. Also knew that not only was she an orphan, but her extended family wanted nothing to do with her. So he more or less, got her on a platter of gold. And it was so easy. So now she's in his house. After maybe having 2 children, the next thing is begin to speak to her rudely, talk to her anyhow, dating other women outside, doesn't matter or care if she knows, and it's hurting her and it's killing her, gradually. Emotionally, the trauma is too much. Psychologically, she cannot bear it. So sometimes this kind of thing, it pushes some people to begin to have suicidal thoughts, or to begin to think of doing something extreme. And when I say something extreme, sometimes they take the law into their hand and feel, okay, this man is making me worthless. I can't stand it again. I will do anything. Can go as far as even taking the laws into their hand. I wouldn't want that to happen. In as much as people don't really realize that psychological and emotional trauma do exist as a form of domestic violence. But if we want to cast our mind back to normal relationship you had even before marriage, you see that there's always a tendency. One of the reasons that some people while dating break up, why courtship break up, is maybe some of them see the tendency of a kind of psychological abuse or verbal abuse that brings about emotional trauma, and they begin to say, I don't think I can take this, and the wise ones leave. But unfortunately, some don't pick this red light that is showing, and they go into the relationship or marriage, and eventually the end is not always good. Sometimes also, let me be emphatic about this, it can also be a combination of all: psychological, emotional, physical, financial, all. And whoever is the victim of this, most times they feel worthless. And I just want to use this medium to say, if you are going through something like this, please and please do not keep it to yourself. Do not bear those beatings. Do not bear the trauma that makes you cannot sleep. You are thinking, you're having a headache, your BP is going up, you cannot even understand why you are on this earth. Please look for somebody to talk to. Yes, try to get across. You could even put a comment there that will make me understand that you need help, and I could refer you to places where you get help. And this is one of the most important parts of domestic violence I want to also really bring out. Tomorrow we'll be taking the last phase of our domestic violence. We'll be talking about the victims of domestic violence and the outcome on the society. I hope that you have thought or heard something that you can think about, and please do comment, subscribe. Please just subscribe so that you can press the notification button so that you can get more of my videos and rub minds together. And please press the like button. God bless you. Thank you. Till I come next time. Bye.